Hello, everybody, and welcome to Glory Glory Live for the first time. I'm your host, always, Kyle Quinn, and join me again today is Chris Nugent. How's it going, Chris?
Not too bad, Kai. Not too bad. Good to be live for the first time. This is a whole new experience.
It is for me as well, but I'm excited about it. Anyone listening live, please feel free to leave a comment as we're talking, and please like the video as well and subscribe if you like us talking. Um, okay, we're here primarily to talk about the Norwich game, which, let's be honest, was absolutely brutal. Um, we got the result, which is good, obviously, but the performance it just mirrored like an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer team really from the last 3 months. It wasn't great. The pressing that we expect to see this 11 had been training all week without a game, and we expect to see high intensity, high energy, high pressing. We see none of that. They just reverted back to type. What was your thoughts on it, Chris?
Yeah, just awful, awful performance. And like you said, Kyle, it was just like we've been all season. I would even go far as to go back and say, the way we've been in recent years is never mind Ole Gunnar Solskjaer team. It's more like a Louis van Gaal team. We're going back to this slow build up kind of play. And I feel, to be honest, like we've never really got out of that. And I was kind of hoping that Ranić was going to change that. I'm still very confident that with time he will change that. But yeah, we thought that he would turn the corner. I think he thought we'd turn the corner. In the first game that he took over against Palace, he said he could believe how quickly things had changed and the players had picked up his instructions. But it seems like they all just forgot them again and went back to the usual old slow, no intensity, no pressing, predictable kind of stuff. Yeah, pretty poor. A hell of a lot of work to be done. I think Ranić will now realise the kind of the volume of the task that he's got on his hands, unfortunately.
Yeah, they were easily overwhelmed by the crowd and Norwich, pressing us and putting us under pressure. They just seemed to fold a wee bit under that. And I mean, honestly, Norwich are the worst team in the league, and the league table shows that. And we went life and death with them. You know, I'm a bit worried. Ahead of going to Brentford, for example, on Tuesday night. They've had a brilliant season so far. I think they're in the top half of the table. Liverpool didn't win at Brentford. It was three each, I think, and Chelsea laboured to a 1-0 win away to Brentford. We're very lucky, so we need to buck up our ideas, or we're going to get turned over on Tuesday night.
Yeah, it's a strange thing because the more you talk and the more we see what's going on, the more I kind of feel like you hear pundits saying Man United aren't that far away, and then at times we laugh and go, "Oh, for flip me, we're miles off." But when you look at the players that we have, and you look at how well we can play when we do have that intensity, even the first 10 minutes yesterday, I thought we started with a bit of intensity, but it very quickly died. But when we did, Norwich were looked like they didn't know what to do, and that's what teams will look like when you press them. You press them into mistakes. So, ironically, in some ways, at times I think we aren't far away, but we seem to be intent on doing things wrong. And as long as you do that, you're going to be miles off, and the results just reflect that. So it's very frustrating because I do feel like we have, in some ways at least, maybe the team's unbalanced, but we have at least the individuals to ruin, teams that are lower down than us. But we seem intent on not actually caring about doing it. And you're right, Kyle. We kind of got away with it ish against Norwich. The performance we didn't get away with it. De Gea saved us a few times and we got a penalty. It was for me a Stonewall penalty, but you can't rely on penalties to win games all the time. You have to win them in open play. So you're right. Brentford could be a really, really, really tough game if the attitudes aren't right. And based on yesterday, the attitudes aren't right. So that really needs to change fast.
Yeah, Norwich just weren't ruthless enough up front, and Brentford do have the forwards to score goals, and if we give them those kind of chances, they will score. And like you said, De Gea there, he's magnificent again. I mean, but I always hate seeing De Gea being our man of the match because that's a sign of a poor performance. Um, there was one save he made which was brilliant. I think it was Harry Maguire was beaten in the air again, although the guy did have a run on him. I think the guy who he thought he'd scored the header, he was already celebrating apparently, forgetting that he's probably facing the best shot stopper probably the last 30 years. So you never celebrate until the ball's actually passed again and in the onion bag.
To be honest, I think I thought it was in as well. I think most people did. You nearly enjoy them more because it just shows how good the save was when you as a United fan think that's a goal, and then out of nowhere just comes to head with his arm. It just lifts it right off the line. It's brilliant, brilliant to watch for a United fan. You're right, Kyle. It's yeah. you can never underestimate that man.
Yeah, and another big save at the far stick as well, close to the end. I thought that was in too. Um, and it might have been given offside, but the game wasn't a no. Um, yeah, I think Lindelof was turned a couple. He had to make a save from Timo Pukki as well. Lindelof easily turned, Maguire beaten in the air. No, it's not great. It's obviously there's going to have to be personnel changes. In terms of transfers and in terms and people who are on the bench yesterday are going to have to starting games soon because it isn't working. This team, this level of performance. We got 1-0 wins against Palace and Norwich, but this isn't good. Um, like we had someone pointed out that under Solskjaer, the new manager bounce lasted for like 3 months. What's the new manager bounce been for Ranić? But 30 minutes against Crystal Palace, and we'll revert back to type again. It's just not good enough. He's going to have to make a few changes for Tuesday night.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to know what's going on behind closed doors, really. And I think as United fans, if we call a spade, we've all been feeling the same way, really, since Ferguson retired, that things haven't been good, and we've all wanted things to be better. We all want to win trophies. We all want to be contented for trophies. And I think where we all kind of get at each other's throats is what's the cause of the problem. And nobody really knows. No fans on the outside know because it's impossible for you to know without having the full details, which you never have. You're on the outside. And I think that the more time goes on, in some ways, we find out bits and pieces. I mean, I think that most people will agree that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was never a top level coach and probably was never going to be at that elite level. Ranić seems to be an elite level organizer at the very least, and an elite level football person. He's never managed at the elite level. I think that he knows exactly what's wrong, and without being pessimistic, I'm still skeptical that any manager at United will be allowed to fix the problems, because I feel that like you say, Kyle, some of it is tactics. But if you look at that team yesterday, yeah, okay, the tactics are set up differently. The personnel was pretty much an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer team, so that makes me think: does Ranić just think the same players that Solskjaer thought were good? Does he still think they're good, even though we said Solskjaer got it wrong? Or is it that it was the tactics that needed to change, or is it the people themselves? And I think it's probably a bit of everything, like you said. It's definitely personnel needs to change. My argument is other managers may have thought the same thing, but whether they're allowed to change the personnel is another question. And if you can't do anything about it, then you can't win. So I really hope, and I think Ranić knows what he's doing. I just hope he gets the backing again of the board and whoever's in charge to do what he needs to do and get rid of the people he needs to get rid of and bring in who he needs to bring in. So that's what I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see these changes actually happen. So,
well, we know long term, if he doesn't stay on as coach, he's going to be there as a consultant, and he likes to have full control of transfers. So if he's not given that, I think he'll walk. So it'll be interesting to watch. Hopefully that it doesn't come to that, and they do allow him to sell players and buy players, because he's done this. He's built a few clubs in Germany, by himself, and the whole Red Bull organization, all their clubs, he's been responsible for buying and selling the players, and they've obviously been successful. So they have to allow him to get on with it. In the
totally
meantime,
agree.
yeah, he needs to make changes for Tuesday night. Obvious ones for me. You say there, it was like a Solskjaer team. It was, except for the fullbacks. He's made Dallo and Tell his
True,
first
true,
choice.
true.
Dallo, I think, was impressive again, but Tellez always worries me defensively. Uh, you know, people have kittens watching him defending. It's um, he's got a good delivery on him. He's good to set corners and free kicks and stuff, but he's just not top level, and I don't think he's going to be a long-term solution. Even if the manager doesn't fancy Luke Shaw. Yeah. What was I going to say? I was going to say Fred McTominay were average again. I mean, Fred is getting a lot of praise lately for his performance against Crystal Palace and Arsenal, even though we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly from Fred in that game and the Villarreal game. But Fred McTominay are just not, they're not they'll work hard, but they're limited in terms of ability. And yesterday their their limitations were exposed again. They're just not the long term solution. And obviously he's going to have to be either he's going to have to bring in Van der Beek for one of them. In the meantime, and long term, he's obviously going to have to sign a few midfielders. Hopefully, we can get one in January if possible.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the thing about Fred and McTominay, and also the Sean Tellez thing, I think it kind of comes down to what people have said for a long time, and what I think Ranić, if I'm quoting him correctly, said himself recently, is that it's about balance and the lack of balance within the squad. And I don't mean the team; I mean the squad. I've heard a lot of various things talked about. I heard some people say recently that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wanted a massive squad, and that's why we have all these players. To me, the squad that we have is the result of years of different regimes and different managers coming in and coming out, and also compounded by the fact that each time a new manager comes in, he's not able to get rid of players who don't fit his system, because we prioritize making sure they've got a contract. So if they're ever sold, the club gets plenty of money and all these things. So the result of that is this mishmash of players that fit a different kind of systems, different philosophies, for want of a better word, all jumbled together in this massive pool of players that no manager really can figure out what to do with. And if they can, they're not allowed to make the changes to make it balanced. And that's where you end up with, and I think balance, to be honest, it's not a very difficult thing to figure out. It just means that, in the modern world, you want defenders who are dynamic. You want them who can attack and defend at the same time. We don't have that. Like you say, you've got Tellez. Tellez is great at attacking, but he's suspect defensively. Luke Shaw is pretty good at attacking. I would argue his delivery's not as good as Tellez, and he's a bit better at defending, but he's not brilliant at either. Wan-Bissaka is absolutely brilliant defensively, offers nothing going forward. That Dallo again, brilliant going forward, not so great coming back. It's just, you just need somebody either who can do both, or if you don't have it, if you don't have a defender who's suspect in defending but good going forward, then you need a winger who's able to drop back, or somebody who's able to cut in and make up for that, because you have to have a squad that's strong defensively and strong going forward. And if individuals don't have that, then you have to have a collection of people who can do that. And that's the problem. Yesterday even you saw more square pegs and round holes. What was Bruno Fernandes playing? Right wing or something? They showed it on I think Jamie Redknapp talked about it on the analysis after. There's lots of examples of him drifting in because he's not a right midfielder. His instinct is to come into the centre. That's going to cause you problems at that level all day long. And this is the issue: lack of balance within the squad. And Ranić, I feel sorry for Ranić, because Ranić is kind of building the car. As the car's driving along the road, he's expected to solve these problems to get results immediately. But he's bound to see there is a lot of work needs done. So I think he's really up against it. I really do. And I think, like I said about every manager, I think we need to give him time. Hopefully get that time. And you should say, Kyle, hopefully get that back in, because I think there's a lot of work to be done. That squad is just, heavy in certain areas, not heavy enough in other areas. And balance is definitely an issue for me. Yeah.
Yeah, too top heavy and not enough quality defenders or centre midfielders. He plays this 4-2-2 formation, and it looks as if, which means that Sancho and Fernandes are playing as like two number 10s just off the front two, and you could argue it doesn't really suit the two of them, and maybe that's why Fernandes is certainly struggling, although he has been for a long time. Sancho did okay again, but again, I think playing as a number 10 is not his strongest position. He needs to be out wide. So Ronick either needs to change the personnel to fit his preferred formation, or he needs to change the formation to get the best out of these players.
And I think he himself has said he's going to do the latter. I think I heard him say in a very early interview that that his philosophy was you have to use what you have. But seemingly struggling again. It's early days. I'm not going to remotely say the guy's not doing well, because he is. And scraping 1-0 win, still a win. But yeah, you're right, Kyle. I think it's proven to be a difficult enough problem to solve. But hopefully he'll get there.
And December is a very difficult month to come in as a new manager with the fixture list is really busy. So he got that opportunity to get training with the first team all week because the young boys game was a dead rubber. But oh, and he will have a 9 day gap between Brighton and the Newcastle game, so that's another opportunity to get training them. And he's going to need those opportunities, on the training ground, because as you can see, there's so much work to be done. In the meantime, I think personnel changes that I would suggest for the Brentford would be Greenwood obviously coming into the starting 11. He keeps bringing on. If I want to be critical of Ranić, he keeps bringing on Greenwood for Sancho when Sancho is actually one of our better players. But that's maybe because he thinks Greenwood he likes to play him a bit deeper as a number 10 rather than one of the forwards. So
Mm.
um, Greenwood has to come in for me, and Van der Beek has to come in. I think Fernandes and Rashford to drop out for Van der Beek and Greenwood. Would you go along with that?
Based on current form, definitely. I mean, I think, yeah, I guess I like Fernandez, and I know, yeah, he hasn't been playing great. And I love Rashford too. Rashford for me is the first one I would drop. Simply because yesterday all I could see in Rashford was it looked to me like he was just trying too hard. Every time he got the ball, it looked to me like he just wanted to score, and he didn't. He was leaving it too late to realize the scoring opportunity was gone, and then trying to lay it back. And at that time, the move had broken down, and I found his decision. He worked really hard. He ran really well. He didn't, but his output was for me was horrendous. Um, yeah, and Fernandez, didn't have a good game either. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue that, but for me, definitely Rashford would be up top wise. Would be the first one I would drop, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Rashford had a particularly good game yesterday. Yeah, like we've talked about many times, he puts his head down and goes past people, but doesn't look up and try to find a teammate. Or when he does, he plays the ball behind him. Like that chance Ronaldo had, where he had to reach back and he scooped the ball over the bar. That's because Rashford played it behind him.
Yeah, it's yeah, exactly, Kyle. And he did that numerous times. There was so many times that I saw him on the ball, roughly in and around the penalty area, and you just knew by his body language he was sniffing for an opportunity for space for a shot when there was people around him in better positions, and you could see that what he was doing was trying to find a way he could have a shot on goal, and so it just felt to me like he was thinking, I need a goal, and that really on a couple of occasions he could have passed it to somebody who was in a better position and might have scored. Yeah, it was a little bit selfish. I don't like to say selfish from Rashford because I don't think he's that type of player. I do think he's a team player. Maybe desperation is maybe a better word. It felt like he needed a goal for himself or something. And yeah, he's prioritizing that over the team in some ways.
Well, one thing that's more important than football is obviously a player's health, and Lindelof went down with breathing difficulties yesterday. I mean, we've seen this quite a lot with the likes of Christian Eriksen and Sergio Aguero having to retire. It just seems to be never ending, these types of respiratory or heart conditions. So hopefully he makes a speedy recovery.
Yeah, I hope he's all right. Yeah, I was a bit when I saw it, I was a bit concerned. He was obviously patting his chest, and it looked a bit, yeah, it didn't look too good. Yeah, you can say, it's far more important than football. To be honest, as soon as I saw that, like or loathe Lindelof, thinking he should start or not, you do never want to see that. He's obviously he's a footballer. He's a human being. He's got a family and stuff. Yeah, no, it wasn't nice to see that. Yeah, I've heard that he's okay. So yeah, hopefully that's the case. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, good luck to him.
Yeah, I think Bailly might come in then on Tuesday night, assuming that Varane isn't ready yet, because if 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 there is something wrong with Lindelof, it's best to let him sit out for a while, because you don't want to take risks with that sort of thing. Not that I'm a doctor or anything, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no,
Um,
definitely not. Definitely not.
yeah, let's come on to the player ratings now. David De Gea. I mean, that's a simple 9 out of 10, really, isn't it?
If not a 10, if not a 10, there's probably not much else he could have done, really. The guy did absolutely everything was asked of him. Everything was thrown at him. The kitchen sink, he saved it. He pulled it right off the line. Yeah, it was just a vintage David De Gea, top quality performance. Yep.
And he's already looking like he's going to be player of the season again, which is quite depressing. I'm sorry to say. Um, okay, Diogo Dallo, I think he was pretty good yesterday. Going forward, he's got that in his locker. He can play 1-2s and get in behind and get crosses into the box, and he likes to cut in and have a shot on goal with his left foot as well. So you can see him getting goals. Definitely later, as the season progresses. So yeah, a decent performance by him.
I agree, Kai. Yep, I think I would probably give him a 7. Albeit I'm saying there about Tellez and Dallo having defensive frailties. If I'm absolutely brutal, honest, I can see why Ranić picks them. I actually like them both. I think they're both very good going forward. Yep, they look dangerous. They look like they put teams under pressure, which in the modern game is what you want to see. You want your fullbacks to be almost as good as midfielders in some ways, and I think those two have certainly got the makings of some of those qualities. So yep, I thought he's pretty good.
Well, you see, Ranić has to play attacking fullbacks because he doesn't play a wide man, further up the pitch. So they're given the responsibility of providing the width. So you can't have Aaron Wan-Bissaka in the 4-2-2 formation. So that's why I think his United career is in serious doubt now.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
right. Yep.
Maguire, beaten in the air for that chance for that the guy saved, where the guy was already celebrating. He could have scored himself, actually. A really good cross from Sancho. Uh, Although I don't want to be too harsh, but it would have been a bit of a lucky goal. I don't think the save that Krul had to tip over the bar. I don't think Maguire really meant that. I think he just tried to get something on the cross and kind of looped towards the goal, and obviously Krul save. But not one of Maguire's worst games, I'll say, but there was holes in his performance.
Yeah, I'm gonna be generous and give him a 6. I think the opposition wasn't of the absolute highest quality, like you say. Norwich are in a pretty poor position in the league, so I think he wasn't massively taxed on a kind of a minute by minute basis. Yeah, you say, Kyle, it was a decent header. He probably didn't mean it. I think it might have clipped slightly off the opposition defender, which kind of gave it that sort of spin that made it loop up. I think it was almost like a bit of a kind of a two heads on the ball at the same time type scenario. But I mean, he wasn't awful, but yeah, just Maguire's just Maguire. He's just what he always is. He doesn't have a lot of pace. He relies on reading the game because he doesn't have the pace when he's out of position to get back. And that was the same as yesterday. At times he just looked a bit frail. And you're right. We said it so many times. He gets beaten in the air on occasions, and for a guy of his size, if he has any qualities, it's his height. And so he really should never be getting beaten in the air, but he regularly does. But yeah, I'll give him a generous 6.
And Victor Lindelof was turned a couple of times. One where Timo Pukki had that shot that was heading for the top corner that the guy tipped over, and one where he was turned inside the box, and I think Fred just got a toe on the ball from behind as the striker was about to shoot and probably score. So again, Lindelof he's just turned far too easily.
Yeah. Again, I suppose a 5. I mean, if I give Timo Pukki a bit of credit, I think Pukki's a good player. He may be at Norwich, who aren't riding high in the league, but I do believe Pukki's a good player. I always think I suppose at the Premier League level, you do always have to have some top quality players, regardless of your position. It's a tough league, and Pukki is one of those players I think could play in a team higher up the league very easily, and he would be a starter. He's a good player, so I wouldn't quite totally underestimate his ability. I think he could turn a lot of good defenders, which he has done plenty in the past. But yeah, Lindelof does get beaten a bit like that far too often, for my liking. And between Maguire and him, he's supposed to be the sort of the pacey one who, is able to make up for mistakes, because he's kind of a bit more agile, but he makes mistakes a wee bit too often. But yeah, I guess I'll go a 5 for him.
So Alex Telles, I think he came close to scoring with a free kick, and like I said to you during the game, I think at some point he will score one of those free kicks. But defensively he was suspect again.
Yeah. I'll give him a 6. I'll give him a 6.5 for the reasons you just said. I like Tellez. I do. I like the look of him. I like what he offers going forward. I think he's got an unbelievable whip on the ball with his left foot. There's a lot of things I quite like about him, but like you say, he needs a bit more discipline defensively. Um, yeah. So, but no, I mean, it wasn't an awful performance. Similar to Dallo in many ways. Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well yourself there, Kyle. So yeah, we'll go 6.5 for him.
Like Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't an amazing defender, but he's such a good footballer that it doesn't matter. So if we have a fullback who isn't brilliant defensively, but he's so good going forward, then it becomes irrelevant. That's if Dallo and Tellez can get to that level in terms of their attacking ability, then they'll be in the team regardless of their defending, as long as they can do the basics.
Absolutely. And again, it comes back to balance, doesn't it, Kyle? That's the thing. If those guys are providing, top level output going forward, you can have somebody else, or you fit the team around covering any frailties they have defensively, and you still got a world class team. So absolutely, yeah. If they can get to that level going forward, and we can find ways to kind of fix any defensive frailties they have, then I think we've got a pretty solid pairing. But yeah, remains to be seen what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not 100% convinced he'll stick with both of them. Long term, he might look at signing a fullback or two in the summer. Okay, Fred and McTominay, like they weren't bad, but they weren't brilliant, and they were okay. And okay, it's just not good enough for a Man United midfield. We grew up on Keane and Butt and Scholes and Carrick, and those two are just not at that level.
Yep, I'll give them both a 6.5. It's kind of weird, even when you talk about them, talk about McFred, you kind of they seem to come together so much. You almost can't talk about them separately a lot of the time. Yeah, I thought they were all right. I actually do. My opinion of Fred has gone up slightly. I will say slightly over the last few weeks. I think that he's done a lot of things right. So I can't fault the guy. And McTominay does what he always does. He puts himself about. He flies in the tackles. Sometimes he's a bit rash. He's not afraid of doing the dirty work when he needs to. As a midfield pairing, as you rightly say, Kyle, compared to what we've had over the years, they're just nowhere near that. But I guess that's not their fault either. The two of them are probably making the best of their ability, but their abilities aren't quite what we used to have in the past. I don't think in the future we would hope to have a bit more quality. Then again, we do have more quality there anyway with Fernandez and well, I was going to say Pogba, but Pogba might leave, and I wouldn't complain if he does. But yeah, we do have quality. Maybe we just need and Van de Beek as well. I think we just need to find that balance. You look back at what we had before. You had the playmaker in Scholes. You had Keane doing the dirty work, but was also very capable of scoring a goal or two himself. We just have two players who are both kind of defensive midfielders. Really, neither of them's ever going to be, a Paul Scholes. So I guess again, it comes back to balance. But for what they do and for what they are, I think they did okay.
You see, the issue is them two. They're not number sixes. They're both number eights, and they're suited to playing together. Then, they can cover each other. One gets forward, one can stay back. It's the reason why Van der Beek can't play in a midfield two with one of them, because Van der Beek needs to be alongside a destroyer, and neither those two are that type of player. Like if Van der Beek was playing in centre midfield, he needs to be playing with a Makaleli. Those two obviously don't offer that. So that's why he can't really play in midfield with those two. It'd be too much of a gamble. We would get exposed. So that's maybe why he's not in the team.
Yeah, the problem I have with Van de Beek is that he's not enough of anything in some ways. I know exactly what you mean, Kyle. If you'd come back to the Scholes and Keane analogy, I guess what you're saying there is that those two are both kind of Roy Keanes in a sense. In the sense of they're going to win the ball, Makaleli, clean up, win the ball, pass it off to the guy who's supposed to then take it off and work his magic. But I don't quite see Van de Beek as that either. Van de Beek's almost a bit in between. He in many ways for me is a typical Dutch footballer. He's absolutely amazing on the ball. He's clean, he's tidy, he does the basics unbelievably well. But in some ways, that's what Roy Keane was, clean and tidy, and did the basics unbelievably well. He talks about it all the time. That was what he was sort of there to do, and he had steel about him. Unfortunately, Van de Beek, and I do think this is what the problem that Ollie had with him, was that he doesn't have that steel. He's got that Roy Keane, do the basics unbelievably well, lay the ball off, do the lovely passes, but he doesn't have that grit. And in some ways, if he's going to be, fitted for the Premier League, he either needs to become more like Fernandez, where he guarantee you goals and assists, or he needs to add that steel to his game so he becomes that player who can win the ball back and do the lovely stuff to pass it off to Fernandez. And in some ways, I think that's his problem. He's not enough. I think I've said it before. He's not enough of anything. That's kind of his issue for me.
Yeah, there seems to be a big debate about what his strongest position actually is, and a lot of people say it's 10, and others say it's number 8, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that is the problem.
But if he's going to play in a midfield too, because he's not a combative player, there needs to be a destroyer alongside him, and we don't currently have that at the club. Matic, you could say, is that player, but I mean, he's long past his best now. He's in his mid-30s now, and we're going to have to replace him, as soon as possible. Okay. So what was the mark for Fred McTominay again?
I think it would give them a collective 6.5. Yeah, you're right. Fred McTominay. One score, two players, one score.
One doesn't come without the other. That seems to be the way it's been ever since Ollie's been there.
Pretty much.
Fernandes then, another poor game, we have to be honest.
I'm gonna have to give him a 5. Yeah, Kyle. I don't think he played well. He looked like a square peg in a round hole. As you rightly said, the formation that Ranić plays there, he's not really a winger, but then he's not really a centre midfielder either. So he's kind of playing in between his, kind of two positions. I just don't think he had a good game. I don't think maybe the system just didn't suit him or whatever it was, but yeah, he didn't have a particularly good game, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he tried to pass with the outside of his foot, a diagonal ball in the second half, and it went straight to the left back of Norwich, and that just summed up his performance for me. It wasn't good now. But he's been poor. Like, he's been, ever since he signed, from like January 2020 until August 2021, he was our best player by a mile. But over the last couple of months, his form has fallen off a cliff, and I'm really not sure why.
I know. I don't know either. Yeah, I don't know what's happened. I mean, in some ways, you could argue that he's just fallen victim to the culture of the team. Because he's become like everybody else in the team, and he's kind of mirroring what's going on around him. We were always hoped, and I do think that as general kind of default, personality is to be a winner, is to be somebody who demands a lot of people. And this is what we keep talking about. The pundits keep talking about, these lack of characters and people not kind of getting called out on making mistakes. And I don't know if it's something to do with a culture where, I feel like Fernandes is the type of person that would call people out on their mistakes, just like what you would kind of expect from, a top level club and players who demand the best. And I don't know, maybe he called a few people out and it didn't go down well. And maybe that's why he's kind of fallen into the mold of just going with the status quo. I don't know, but whatever it is, you're right. He hasn't been playing well, and his body language isn't quite. I'm not saying it's poor, because it's not, but yeah, he's not quite doing what he was doing before, which is a shame. But yeah.
Hopefully, he can get back to form, and Ranić can find the best position for him, to get the best out of him. So Jaden Sancho, another pretty good display. What he does different to Rashford is, well, what he does similar to Rashford is he takes people on, goes past people, but he looks up and he tries to find a teammate with his left foot or right foot. So, another positive game without being, spectacular.
I'm going to go ahead and give him a 7.5. For me, I think I was texting during the game. For me, Kyle Barda, he was our best player. I actually don't think he did very much wrong. I really don't. I think all you could ask for him more would have been an assist or a goal. I think he did plenty right. Like you said, you summed it up. That's exactly how I saw it. He was great on the ball, taking players on. He was the only one that looked like playing with intensity. He wanted to close people down when he got the ball. He wanted to speed up the play. He didn't want it to be a play a slow pass sideways and move into a position to receive it back. He wanted to make things happen quickly. He was direct, and he wasn't like Rashford was doing the same, but Rashford was doing it kind of like a headless chicken. He was direct, but direct the wrong times. Whereas I think Sancho, like you said, knew when to release it and knew how to find a player. He put in, I think it was him put in the cross for Maguire, as you said. I think he linked up well with Ronaldo. I genuinely think Sancho couldn't have done much more. I honestly believe that performance from Sancho, if every player matched that performance, we would have blown them away. I really do believe that. I actually don't think he could have done much more, genuinely. I was disappointed for him when he got taken off. Actually, I was surprised that he came off. But you said earlier a reason for that. I think you're probably right. But I thought he was great. Don't think he could have done much more.
he took him off for Greenwood against Crystal Palace as well, which I didn't agree with. Um, funny enough, the substitutions yesterday were like Ollie was in the dugout. First of all, he waited about 65 minutes to make a sub when they were playing so poorly. Uh, he, he he wasn't bringing off the people who weren't playing well. He brought off someone who was playing well. And Van der Beek came on after 87 minutes. It was like Ollie was in the dugout again.
Again, yes, I'm going to reserve judgment. I like I said earlier, Ollie got a lot of criticism, but we don't know what went on behind closed doors. Maybe Ranick's just come in and seen the exact same things and went, "Don't like the look of him. Don't like the look of him. Don't like that." I don't know. I just hope results improve. But yeah, exactly. Some of the things he did yesterday were the same as Ollie, and you go, "Why is he doing the same thing? Was Ollie right? Was Ollie wrong? Is Ranick right?" If they're both doing the same things, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit. I don't want to be critical of a manager at this point, but if I'm going to point to something, it would be the substitutions. And should have took off Rashford or Fernandes, not taking off Sancho. Like Sancho was our best player, outfield player, as you say.
I think he was. I was
Yeah,
surprised at that. But regardless of who the managers in the dugout, I don't see how anybody takes Sancho off. It can only, yeah, I can't see any reason for it. I really can't. I think he was doing everything right. I don't know unless, yeah, I don't know unless he just thought he was getting tired or something. Maybe he thought he was running out of steam. Maybe that's what it was because his performance was good. So I don't know.
yeah. I was just. I think most fans who were watching would have taken off Rashford or Fernandes, but clearly he wants Greenwood to play in a more of a role in further back for some reason. He's seen a creative element to Greenwood's game, and he wants to get the best out of him in that respect. We obviously see him as a pure striker, but you know he does have that creative element to him. Even some of the goals he's created for Cavani in the past with lovely crosses is tells me that he's got that in his locker. So it'd be interesting to see will he start him in that position? Maybe on Tuesday or next Saturday. He definitely needs to
Yeah,
start one way or another.
yeah, it's an interesting one with Greenwood, Kyle, because um I've seen plenty of players over the years, even at amateur level, plenty of players who they play wide. I think Rooney was a bit like this in some ways, although Rooney's goal record was phenomenal, so it's kind of hard to argue the point. But there is players I think who like taking the ball from deep. They almost like the game in front of them. They like be able to see what's around them, and they will score goals from those positions. And that is very different to being an out and out striker who kind of feeds off scraps, who feeds off being in the position when the ball arrives and not taking the ball into that position. And I think that to be a striker like that requires a lot of patience. It requires high levels of concentration. It requires you to be happy for being out of the game for periods, knowing that when you get a chance, you're going to take it. I think that's what Ronaldo has learned to do over the years, and I think that's why he's continued to be such a good player, is because he hasn't got the legs anymore to be that creative player that Greenwood is that he once was. But he's been able to find that patience to adapt and say, I'm happy to just wait for the one or two moments in the game that I need to be up for, and I'll be ready for them. And so maybe with Greenwood, I don't know if I don't want to say immaturity, but maybe it's lack of experience, or at a young age, and he is a very young fella. That maybe he at the minute likes to have the ball at his feet, likes to be involved all the time to stay concentrated. So maybe for now he's better. Maybe that's why coaches think he doesn't quite have the discipline to just wait up front and make those runs and get those positions when he's not on the ball. Maybe they think he likes to have the ball at his feet to make things happen. So I can understand if that's the case why he's better than sitting out further wide where he's going to get the ball and be able to bring it into goal scoring positions, etc. So maybe, I mean, I think for me is honestly one of the most natural finishers that I've ever seen, and that's been said lots of times. So he lends himself with that to being an out and out striker. But like I say, maybe he just doesn't quite have the kind of the discipline at this point in his career to wait for those opportunities. So maybe people think he'd drift out of games. He switch off if he doesn't kind of be involved a lot. So maybe that's a rationale. I don't know. That would be maybe my opinion on it. But yeah, he certainly has plenty to offer. But like you said, Sancho does as well. And I'd like to see maybe them both in the team. It's a shame to see Sancho having to go off for him to come on.
Yeah, I'd love to see both of them in the team. I also would love to see Ronaldo and Cavani in the team, but I don't think all
Same.
four of them in the team would give us great balance. So I don't see that
No.
happening at any point.
Again, the old word of balance. It's a shame. It's a shame if because we got so many great attacking players. Really do. You want to see all in play, but it's just not realistic. Yeah.
No, as Gary Neville uses the terminology, too many generals and not enough soldiers.
Well, that's another way to put it. 100%.
Okay, Rashford. Like we've said, it was a poor performance by him. One of those games where he just puts his head down, runs past people, and doesn't look up. Constantly just looking to score himself.
Again, it's strange because I think if you're Rashford, you've come off that pitch saying, I gave everything today. I took players on. I got into good positions. I didn't do much wrong. Every time I gave the ball away, I was trying to create something. So it's strange that I think he might feel like he worked really hard, and you could easily look and say he did really well. But his end product was really bad. It was just his decision making. It was purely his decision. And I feel it smacked me of a wee bit of desperation of somebody who needed a goal. And it almost like they were without meaning to. They were just making poor decisions because they were so desperate to score. Um, yeah, so it's annoying because I think he put in a good performance. Defenders playing against him will have still thought he was a nightmare because he was stretching them and pushing them all the time. So it probably felt like a good performance, but just the last final ball was just always wrong, and it was really frustrating. There was one point I saw where I don't know if you remember this, he was kind of dropped back into midfield and he tried to knock the ball inside to his right, and it was it kind of bobbled up on him and hit against the opposition midfielder, and he threw his hands in the air as if to say, nothing. This is, what's like, as if somebody did something wrong, and I kind of just thought, but you just knocked it off the guy. What are you complaining about? Your pass was poor, and I don't know if that was just just again, just like felt like he was desperate for things to come off, and he just wasn't making good decisions. But I love Rashford, so I don't want to be too critical of him. But yeah, just this decision making was bad yesterday.
Yeah, he's a lot to work on when it comes to his end product. Playing that ball behind Ronaldo as well wasn't great either. But I'm glad he did try to find a teammate rather than having a shot on goal, as he does too often.
Yeah.
So Ronaldo himself then, I actually don't think he had that good of a game. I know he won the penalty and he scored the penalty, but I think his touch and his control was way off yesterday. And he had another chance where he didn't shoot at the first opportunity and he turned back inside and then Krul saved his left-footed effort. So I don't think he was brilliant, but obviously he won us the game and that's what he's there to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I heard a few of the pundits in the studio after say he had a terrible game. I don't think he had a terrible game, but there was a few moments that were pretty bad. Like you said, there was a few times he gave the ball away, and I saw the ball being given away. I went, who gave that away? And I went, oh, flip's sake, it's Ronaldo. You went, you don't expect him to give it away. You think he's going to make a good decision. And then, like you said, that one where he was, I can't remember who played it over to him. The ball was out on the right hand side of the goal, and you thought he was going to hit it first time, and then he cut inside, and I thought dead on, did everything right, and then the left foot finish was straight at Tim Krul, and you went, oh, flip's sake, either hit it first time or you're right, or if you're going to hit with your left, try and get it into the corner. He just made it too easy for him. Yeah, so I agree with you. He was disappointing, but on the flip side, all you pay Ronaldo to do is score goals and win games. He scored the only real chance he had from the penalty, and he won us the game. So technically he'll come off saying, I did it again. I won the game for everybody and I did my job. But you're right. I think there was a few things he probably would be a wee bit disappointed with.
So what would you give him then? Give him a 7 then for his contribution to win the game?
I think a 7's fair, Kyle. Yep. Yeah. Overall play, not amazing, but I mean, he scores the goal, he wins the game. And again, high pressure, and Tim Krul likes to try and put people off. Ronaldo was having none of it. Stepped up, cool as you like, tucked it away. You got to get some credit for that alone. So, yeah, I think a 7's pretty fair.
And it tells you, what a superstar he is, that some Norwich fans were filming him celebrating his goal against Norwich in their home ground. So half their fans had their phones out. Like, it just tells you everything you need to know about what a big deal Ronaldo is.
He's one of those players. I wouldn't be surprised if in every tunnel after every game he's got a queue of opposition players trying to swap shirts with him. Do you know what I mean? He's one of those guys. You're just like, come on, he transcends football. He transcends this generation of football. He's up there with the greatest of all time. Any player who shares a pitch with him, they may not feel this way when they're on the pitch, but there's no two ways that every player that shares a pitch with Ronaldo these days will come off and say, I'll be able to tell the grandkids about this. I shared a pitch with one of the greatest ever to play the game. So, yeah, it says it all really about him.
It's been happening already this season. Players looking to swap shirts at half time and all in the tunnel, and it's crazy.
I'm
Someone who
not
fell out,
surprised.
somebody fell out with him during a game. They had a bit of a coming together, but the guy still wanted a shirt at the end of the game.
I'm not surprised. I'm not not surprised at all. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. That's it. He's just, like I say, he's one of the greatest of all time. It's like, when you finish your career, you like to be able to say, I played against or with one of the best that's ever played the game. And he is one of those people. So, yeah, all bets are off.
He's probably statistically, I would say now, the greatest goal scorer of all time. It's well over 800 goals now.
It
Um,
is. Yeah.
I know Pele and Romario like to claim that they've got 1,000 career goals, but a lot of these are not accounted for, and ones that were accounted for are in like the Brazilian league and the MLS and all. Like Ronaldo has played all his football in Europe,
Yeah.
in Serie A, La Liga, and the Premier League, and obviously Portugal a bit as well. So like he scored all these goals at the top level.
100%. And not to say the other guys didn't score great goals, but some of the goals he scored as well, they're like Roy of the Rovers type stuff. There's stuff you see in cartoons. They really are. Like some of the goals. I was watching a clip the other day. You'll kill me enough for not remember what game it was, Kyle. You know me, I'm awful remembering specific games. Um, but I think he must have put it in from about 30 yards. I think he took it past three or four people and just absolutely belted it. They nearly took the net off. Like, I mean, just the sheer power that guy can generate is just phenomenal. He
Is
really
this the
is.
goal against Porto for United in the Champions League? I think it was about 42 yards out.
I think it might have been that one. It's just, and then that header against Roma, where he just comes in out of nowhere into your TV screen and just rises about what looked like about 10 feet in the air and a bullet header. I mean, the athleticism of the guy alone
And
is just it's impressive.
the overhead kick for Real Madrid against Juventus, I think it won goal of the season. I know, to be fair, Gareth Bale's overhead kick against Liverpool in the final, I think, was better and should have won.
Agreed.
But Ronaldo
I
gets the
agree.
award because of who he is.
I totally agree with you. I never forget that. You and I watched that game together, as you probably remember, the Gareth Bale one. And I remember thinking, if that does not win goal of the season for being the goal in a Champions League final of that level, yeah, it was definitely, I felt a bit political, that one. But coming back to Ronaldo, just he really is honestly unbelievable. The level of the goals that he scored, the amount of goals that he scored, the longevity in his career, and like you say, it's not even that he's still going; it's who he's playing for. He's still going at the top level, playing the Premier League for Manchester United, playing the Champions League. It's not like he's sort of winding down and he's still in the Premiership, but he's mid table. Whatever. Well, United are mid table, but you know what I mean. He's still trying to do it at the top level. He's pushing himself as hard as he's ever done. Like that alone is impressive. He's just, yeah. If he's not the greatest ever, he's well up there. He must be in the top two or three. He really is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's one of those unique occasions where we sign a new player and he's starting off on like what is it 118 goals, so he's not starting off at naught. He already has 118 goals for United before this season.
I
So
know he's just adding to it. Yeah, I know he really is. He's amazing, and that's the thing. I will never watch a game. I don't know if I could ever watch a game. It would take a lot, I think, for me to watch a game that Ronaldo's playing and to be really disappointed with him. Simply because he himself, I don't think, ever lets himself have a really disappointing game. Even if he doesn't play well, he's able to make sure he has an impact. And I think that's the difference between him and other players. That is the mark of an absolute winner, is that he can be out of a game for 70, 80 minutes, whatever, and he'll still be switched on the 91st or 93rd or fourth minute as he was in the first minute. And if he gets that chance and he'll take it. And that's, I think, what sets him apart from other players, which is why he's so dangerous, and um it's why you want to have him in your team, because he always guarantees you, yeah, he'll still have an impact even when he's having a poor game. Yeah.
yeah, he's phenomenal. Yeah, it's unbelievable he's still playing at this level at 36. Um, Yeah, I think he should be captain of the team as well, probably. Although somebody brought up the point the other night that it might be better just to give it to somebody else. No, obviously, no one wants Maguire to be captain. To be brutally honest, um, people have suggested De Gea or Fernandez. There's no point in giving it to Ronaldo because he's a leader anyway. You may as well make somebody else a leader in the team. By virtue of being the captain, Ronaldo doesn't need the captaincy to be a leader. He already is.
Yeah, and the things that I know, guys, but fans, really only see games, and you kind of think, oh, you need leader in the pitch, but you absolutely do. But I think the captain, club captain, does a lot more off the pitch as well. They have to organise bits and pieces, I think, for the players, and they're kind of an ambassador in some ways too, and they have a lot of responsibilities. And Ronaldo's been doing that his whole career. So like you say, Kyle, it's probably good for somebody else in the team to be doing those kind of things and getting that experience, of having to do the off the field responsibilities and kind of being an advocate for the players and things like that. So I do think it's good to have somebody else that's not Ronaldo kind of doing that. But yeah, I'll reserve judgment on Maguire. Maybe he's a really good captain off the pitch. I don't know.
Well, we'll probably never know that. But what really matters is what he does on the pitch, as we all know. Okay, let's do a rating for Ranić. I think it's maybe the first time I've ever did this. Hopefully not the last. Hopefully he does so well this season that we're still talking about him as manager next season. So based on the Norwich game, what would you give Ranić out of 10?
So I'm probably going to surprise you because I'm going to be generous and I'm going to give him a 7. And the reason why I'm going to give him a 7, and in a way, it's down to himself and what he said, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt in believing that the things that went wrong in the game yesterday were because players didn't do what they were told. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he intended for the team to press and told them to press and told them what not to do, and that they didn't listen. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and give them the benefit of the doubt and say that. The performance was a typical Ollie. I don't even want to say an Ollie performance. It was a typical performance that we've seen from United so often. And if you blame that on the manager, which ultimately I know people will because the manager, the buck stops with him, then you give him a 4 or 5 because it was abysmal. But I'm going to reserve judgment, like I say, and say that he knows what's wrong and he's trying to change it, but maybe they're just not quite taking on board just yet. And yeah, happy to hear what you think, Kyle, because I think you could very easily give him a lower score, but I'm going to try and be positive.
No, I'm not going to be critical of the manager at this point. He was very honest in his assessment of the performance, which I always like. There's been occasions where previous managers, Ollie in particular, would tell you that the United played well when everybody in the stadium could see that they didn't. And I don't like that. I want an honest assessment, and that's what Ranić has been given so far. He definitely was not pleased by what he saw yesterday, and I'm hoping that he will make changes to personnel changes, and obviously he's going to have to do a lot of work on the training ground as well, to get this team, to train them up to play the way he wants them to, and it's going to be a long road. It seems it's not going to happen overnight, and like I said earlier, December isn't a great month for a new manager to come in because there's so many fixtures back to back. And he's going to need time on the training ground with them, and he's not going to get that as often as what he'd like. So it's not been great to watch. Crystal Palace was good for 30 minutes, just really. Obviously, the game the other night doesn't matter because it was just reserves, playing in a dead rubber game, and it wasn't great either. And yesterday was pants. So we're getting results though. That's the main thing. But the performances have to improve if we're going to beat Brentford and Brighton, who are much better teams than Norwich. And hopefully we do step up our performance. So it's going to be really interesting now. Now we've had he could say he was pleased with the Crystal Palace performance. He wasn't pleased yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see what changes we'll see on Tuesday night.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Just coming back, I've been thinking, I had a few thoughts recently about that whole calling players out thing, and telling it like it is that you talked about there. And I actually do think that that's not a kind of an unimportant thing in general. Um, if I remember, Mourinho was very, very obviously very brutally honest, and was never afraid to point fingers and name players by name and say what he thought about their performances. And we always felt that that was some part of that was to deflect any blame that maybe was coming his way. But it was also because he wanted it to be clear that if he thought a player didn't do what he told him to do, that he wanted people to know that he coached them well enough, but the player chose not to listen. So I remember, when Mourinho left, the mood in the camp was generally low, and people talked about Ollie's main job, or his first job, was to kind of lift moods, and that he was able to do that. And I think that whole thing, in some ways, is maybe a bigger part of the issue that is kind of at United at the minute, is more about attitudes, and we talk about it all the time. And Keane always talks about characters, and we hear it all the time. But I think it's nearly not talked about enough in some ways. I mean, if you look back to even the Ferguson era, I remember that Ferguson was very rarely would he have called a player, an individual, out in public. He did it once or twice. He did it with Rooney, I remember distinctly. I think he'd maybe just come to the end of his tether with Rooney, but it wasn't a thing he did often. So I can kind of see why, and Mourinho was so far the other way. I can see why Ollie tried to stay in between, and maybe Ollie went too far the other road. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you don't call a player out in public, then you got to call them out to their face behind closed doors if they're not doing what they need to do, and that needs to be enough for them to respond to. Maybe that wasn't enough for some of the players of United. Maybe they didn't respond to that because they weren't being exposed in public. I feel like Ranić is maybe trying to get a happy medium where he call the team out in public, but not individuals. And maybe that's what he's trying to do, and he's doing it well. Is that he's saying the team didn't do what I told them to do, players didn't do what I told them to do, but I'm not going to name names like Mourinho and say it was this guy, it was that guy. But he has saying, but like Mourinho, I didn't tell them to do what they did. They didn't listen to me. And maybe again, the fact that he brought in a sports psychologist immediately tells me also that he thinks that the problem is mentality. And maybe that what Ollie did wrong, was, we can talk about tactics, but maybe what he partly got wrong was he didn't quite get that management side right. He thought the soft approach, which was the opposite of Mourinho, was going to work for a while, and then it didn't work anymore because people got complacent. And so maybe that's Ranić's biggest challenge. So yeah, hopefully he can get over that challenge.
I think the soft approach following Mourinho is a good short-term solution, but it wasn't a 3-year solution.
And exactly. That's as I say, it worked early because it lifted the mood when it needed to be lifted, but then complacency set in where the mood was high, and then it was almost, we can get away with anything now. And that's why, I think you need to have that happy medium where it's lift the mood when it's low, but when it starts to get out of hand, as Ferguson himself always talked about, complacency is a disease in a football dressing room, and when it gets too high, it needs to be curbed. And I think maybe that's where Ollie went wrong, is that he was able to lift it, but then he wasn't able to bring it back down again. And hopefully Ranić can manage to keep a lid on that, because you got to be hungry all the time, never complacent, but you don't want to lose confidence either. And I think that is a big challenge with that squad that we have for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge challenge for Ralph, Chris Armas, the American coach, and also the sports psychologist who was at the game yesterday as well. Although some fans are getting irritated at the sight of Declan McKenna speaking with Ralph Ranić, because they
Kieran
see
McKenna.
him as being Kieran McKenna, seen him as being part of the failed regime of the past, and don't see why he's still there. And there was lots of leaks coming out, in the final days of all his time in charge, that the players did rate Kieran McKenna as a coach. They seen him as a bit of he treats him like a headmaster, and they don't see him as a serious coach. So again, a bit like him and Mike Phelan shouldn't really be there anymore. I just think it's a classic case of Glasernomics, just refusing to pay them off and just keeping them there when they don't have a role anymore.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, to give some balance, I guess I would say that if the players thought the players said that McKenna was a bit like a headmaster and they didn't rate him as a coach. But then my question would be, who have they rated as a coach? I mean, did they rate Mourinho as a coach? Did they rate Van Gaal as a coach? Are they going to
I
rate
don't rate
Ranić as a
them.
coach?
I don't rate the players.
Well, that's my point. Is it maybe it's the players who should take a look at themselves? Maybe they're the ones who haven't been rateable, and let alone a coach. But yeah, I can understand. McKenna was part of all he set up, and he should have went. But again, this is what I'm trying to allude to: is I still feel there's more problems underneath the surface that aren't quite so obvious, and it's not I don't think it's as black and white as the coaching team were all doing a bad job and they're all gone. I think that there's issues on both sides. Ranić's definitely got his work cut out for him. Yeah.
Well, I come on to a couple of news stories that have been circling in the last couple of days, and one of them, the biggest one, obviously, is that Anthony Martial wants to leave the club. I don't think too many fans will shed tears over that one. One praise that I'll give him for that is that at least he's showing ambition. At least he wants to play football. He's obviously not getting in the United team, hasn't for a while now, and he's not doing a Phil Jones. He's not happy to just sit there and collect his wage package. He wants to go and play football somewhere else. So I'll give him his kudos for that. But I've switched off when it comes to Martial a long time ago. No, I checked out probably well over a year ago. I just think that his United career has been a major disappointment. When he plays like like it's a five-a-side kickabout, down at the local sports hall. He just doesn't really care. He doesn't do any work off the ball. He's not great at even holding the ball up for, I suppose, at number 9. And to be honest, he was a better player at 19 years old for United than he is at 26, and that's never a good sign. So happy for him to move on. Jesse Lingard apparently is going to go in January to Newcastle or West Ham. So good luck to him as well. What's your thoughts on it all?
Yeah, I said it plenty on this podcast too, Kyle, about Martial. Yep, I'll not be sorry to see him go. I really do think it's a shame because I really do feel that Anthony Martial had and has the ability to be one of the best players in world football, but it just seems to me that for whatever reason he's never going to fulfill that potential. And unfortunately, we need to look forward and not back, as we always say. And yeah, I think it's been long overdue, really, that he probably moved on. Yeah, best luck the guy. I hope he does well somewhere else. Hope he's happier somewhere else and starts to perform. It hasn't happened at United for him, and it's not going to happen at this stage. So I think it's the right time to cut the losses. Jesse Lingard, I will give Jesse Lingard some dues. I do firmly believe Jesse Lingard, at the end of it all, is loves football. And I believe that his application work rate is there. I believe that his level of ability is pretty good. He is definitely a very firm Premier League level player. I don't think that, again, that he's quite the level, or maybe just doesn't quite fit in with his skill set to the team that we would maybe want to build in the future. So I think it's the right thing for him. But I'll give him his dues. That he went to West Ham, he did very well. He showed he's still hungry, and I do think he shows. Unlike Martial, his body language is always good. So I won't really say, it's hard to criticize Lingard, but I think for all parties involved, it's probably a good thing he moves on. And he probably did really well at Newcastle. And I can see how that'd be an attractive project for him. They're a team who's looking to try and build for the future, as we know, put a lot of investment in. So fair play to him. Hope he has a good career there. Yep, good on the guy.
Yeah, unfortunately for Lingard, United have so many quality attacking players that he's never going to be a regular for United. He's competing against Sancho and Greenwood and Rashford, Ronaldo and Cavani. It's Fernandez, and it's going to be really difficult for him to become a regular at Man United anymore. Ollie, I think, should have turned to him in his final days, and he didn't. There was so many. We weren't playing well. People were underperforming, and he was having an impact on the bench, but Ollie just wouldn't start him. It's irrelevant now, but my feeling is that something wasn't right between Ollie and Lingard. It might come out someday, in an
Yeah, it's a fair
autobiography
point.
maybe.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I think you're right. He did say good things about him early on. I remember him talking about, when he's a kid and stuff, when he first seen him play, and he talked them up, and he talked a lot of players up when he started. As we know, he was trying to lift the mood and all that. But you're right. I do think towards the end something mustn't have been quite right. I think you're right there. Yeah.
And I thought that, with Ralph coming in, given that he's a guy who'll be willing to press, the opposition's
Mm.
defense, that he would fit in. But maybe he already had one foot out the door, and it's too late now.
Yeah, you're probably right. Again, it could be himself, and in a way, I would respect that if it was him. He maybe just decided, look, I think my time's up here. I need to move on. I need a new challenge. I need a fresh start. And again, if that was the case, it shows that he's hungry as a footballer and he wants to be playing and achieving things, as you say, rather than sitting on the bench collecting a wage packet. So, yeah, no. Generally, I think fair play to Lingard. I think it probably is the right time to go, and I think he'd do well. He did very well at West Ham. Don't see why he won't do well at Newcastle too. So yeah, fair play to him.
Yeah, if he goes to Newcastle, he'd be well paid. He'd probably be the star man there, at least for a while anyway. And
Mm.
yeah, uh, it's probably his main motivation, I would say, is he wants to be part of England's World Cup squad in Qatar. And if he's sitting on the bench for United and not getting many minutes, that isn't going to happen. If he
Yeah,
goes to
fair
somewhere
point.
like Newcastle, West Ham, and starts every game, he'd probably score goals and he'd probably get into the World Cup squad. So I can't blame him for having that motivation.
No, 100%. No, I think that's a fair point. Yeah, I think you're not far off there. Yep.
So apparently, Ranick's already recommended three midfielders who United should be scouting. Not surprised by the names. One being Amadou Hadera of Red Bull Leipzig, who's someone that Ralph brought to Leipzig himself. Um, a lot of people seem to rate this player. I haven't really seen much of him, but I'll take people's word on it, and I'll definitely take Ralph's word on it. Another player that he's recommended is Calvin Phillips of Leeds. And yeah, he was a terrific player for England in the Euros, and obviously he had a great season with
All right.
Leeds last year. And the most exciting name of all that Ralph has apparently mentioned is Jude Bellingham, probably the most exciting young midfielder in the game. Um, yeah, those would certainly all be upgrades on Fred Mctominay, wouldn't they?
Yes, I think they definitely would be. What's their resale value though, Kyle? That's the question I want to
oh,
know.
oh yes, that's the important stuff that the Glazers worry about.
Well, I'm trying to be realistic with the decision making process at United here. Do you know what I mean? No, I'm only joking. Obviously, I'll be a bit cheeky. No, completely. Yeah, I think that they're all great players. And they would all do really well. Um, Again, I'm saying that because I'm skeptical. I have no doubt Ralph Rangnick knows how to build the team and knows exactly what we need. I just need to see it actually happen because I'm just skeptical about how well these plans are actually feasibly implemented. But I hope that's going to change. So let's see what happens. But yeah, I'd be more than happy for any one of those guys to come in. I'll be over the moon.
Okay, another uh, in terms of news, and we've seen the FA Cup draw recently, and the Champions League draw is coming up tomorrow. We've got Villa at home in the FA Cup, so it's Gerrard's Aston Villa coming to Old Trafford. That should be a feisty occasion. Um, it always annoys me that United get Premier League teams in the third round more often than not, and City always get some League Two team in the third round, and this year it's Swindon. I'm not saying the draw is fixed, but it's just ridiculous.
Well, Kyle, I don't feel in a public forum that I could possibly comment on that. No, I
Getting
know
it,
it does. No, I'm joking. Yeah, no, it is. It's really bloody frustrating. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is frustrating. But I don't know. I guess they always say, you have to beat every team if you're going to win the trophy. So it doesn't matter when you get them. But we all know that's a kind of a cliche just to say that. Yeah, it's going to be a tough game. I feel like Ranić will want to. I mean, let's be realistic. We're not going to win the league. We're not going to win the Champions League really either. So really, our most realistic opportunity is we want to win a trophy and we want to finish top four. I think if Ranić got that, he would see that as, and the board. I think everybody involved in United would see that as a fairly good season, something that you could build on. So yeah, I think that we need to get through that tie. We need to have a good show in the FA Cup. We really, really, really do, and the Champions League. But if we could maybe even get the final FA Cup, or God forbid, win the thing, I think that would be really, really nice. this season. But yeah, who knows? The Champions League, a good run would be nice. Into the knockout stages would be great. And kind of see. But like I say, he's building the cars, he's driving it along. So I'm hoping that, the longer he's there, the more things will improve, and that kind of goes without saying, really. So he needs to get short-term results, but I'm hoping that performances will improve and will not be relying on smashing grabs in the next few months. So yeah, you never know what can happen, but it's a lot of tough games ahead.
Well, when he took over FC Schalke midway through a season, they ended up winning the German Cup. They got to the Champions League semi-finals. They were put out by us, ironically. They beat the holders Inter 5-2 at the San Siro in the quarterfinal, and they obviously finished high up the table in the Bundesliga. If he managed to achieve something similar with United this season, given the start that we had, getting battered off the pitch by City, Liverpool, and Watford and Leicester, if we manage to recover from that and finish in the top four, get the Champions League semi-final, win the FA Cup, that would be pretty satisfactory. What do you think?
Totally agree. The only thing that I would say that's different between obviously the Schalke situation and being at Manchester United is the level of expectation outside the club. This is so. I don't want to talk about inside the club because I would like to think that inside the club they're committed to him finishing the season regardless, because he needs time to build. But outside the club, the media and the fans, there'll be a heck of a lot more pressure. You can't lose 5 games on the spin in the league, but go on and win the cup. That wouldn't be seen as satisfactory at United. Whereas at Schalke, they probably would have been happy enough for that, just to get that trophy, regardless of how anything else went. We know that that's going to be different at United. But if he gets the backing, which he should do, to be given the time to make changes, and there's going to be bumps along the road. We're going to have probably a few shockers, a few more awful performances, like yesterday against a better opposition when we're going to get beat. If we can ride those things out, there is a good chance that he could go on in the FA Cup and have a good run and maybe win it, and that would be great. So I think if we just give the guy time and take the pressure off him, understand he's got a lot of building work to do, and hopefully we can get something. But like I said, it's a slightly different prospect to Schalke for that reason, in my opinion.
Well, some fans, including myself, believe that maybe we could go really far in the Champions League if we get a favourable draw. Not on the basis of yesterday's performance.
No.
We'll have to improve massively to go far in the Champions League. From yesterday, that didn't fill me full of confidence. But as we won the group, our potential opponents are the likes of Red Bull, Salzburg, Benfica, Sporting. We take any of those teams. The more difficult draws we can get is PSG and Atletico. Again, I think they're all winnable, but also you prefer someone like Salzburg. I think you would agree, wouldn't you?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to admit, I don't always keep a massive eye on how these other teams are doing in their domestic leagues at this point in time. But yeah. I mean, on paper, you would say those are more winnable games, and you would hope that we'll be able to get through them. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm always positive. That kind of always a glass half full kind of guy. But try to be a bit realistic too, just considering the likes of yesterday. But yeah, I mean, if we get a couple of favourable draws. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say in terms of time. I guess what I'm trying to say is that by the time these fixtures come around, I do believe we'll be in a better spot if we can ride out some of the bumps that will happen between now and then. Maybe by the time these draws come around, we will be stronger and we will be more confident in winning those types of games. And if that happens, then yeah, you're right. Anything can happen. Especially in knockout kind of football.
Well, hypothetically, if say we got a Salzburg in the last 16. And we got like a Villarreal in the quarters, and then like Ajax in the semi-finals. You could find yourself in the final, no problem at all. And
I wouldn't say no problem. I wouldn't say no problem at all, but yeah, no. I know what you mean. Nobody can. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you could, if you get a favourable draw, you could end up getting to a final. Lots of teams have done it.
Absolutely.
And not to say that any of those games would be easy, but they'd be easier compared with the likes of Bayern and the other English sides. So if you manage to avoid the English teams and Bayern until the final, then we've got a chance of making it. And a one-off game against Bayern in a final, we know from the past that anything can happen.
Absolutely. That feels very ironic to say, if you don't mind me, considering who we just sacked. But yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yes.
Yeah, just a wee bit. But no, that's it. Look, you know, at that level, you know, it's small margins make the difference. On anything can happen on a day. You know, Greece won the European Championships for flip's sake. You know, any team well organized, doing the right things, being solid and compact, anything can happen. You know, they're all good footballers. You know, at that level, there's nobody's that's a rubbish player. So yeah, things can happen. I guess I'm trying to be at this point cautiously optimistic, but yeah, you're right, Kyle. If the cards fall the right way, yeah, you just never know. Yeah, and I'll be hoping it happens.
And both times Chelsea have won the Champions League, they changed the manager mid-season. So yeah, it's not always the best team in Europe who wins the competition, and quite often I'd say 7 out of 10 years it's not the best team on paper who wins.
Totally
Um,
agree. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely agree. Yep, knockout
and
football. You know, anything can happen. Anything at all.
and last season was another example of that. City and Chelsea in the final. City the favourites. They are the Premier League champions. They won the league by a mile and would expected to beat Chelsea in that match, but no, Chelsea stifled them and won the game 1-0.
Yeah.
So the best team quite often doesn't win.
Yep. No, 100%. Yep. And I hope that's us this season. I'd rather we were the best team and we won it. But I'd take winning it, not being the best team all day
The
long.
only thing that matters is that trophy. So
About
hopefully,
about
hopefully,
nothing, Kyle. About winning.
yeah, yeah. I know. See, if we won the Champions League by winning 1-0 in aggregate or winning on penalties, throughout the whole tournament, then I'd take that all day long.
Absolutely. The name goes in the trophy. Doesn't matter how you did it. As long as the name's there, that's all that counts. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it's a good place to leave it. Hopefully we'll have you on again during the Christmas period, Chris.
Of course, Kyle. Absolutely. Pleasure as always, mate. Yep. Take care of yourself.
Okay, if everybody can give us a wee like on the video and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on again after the Brentford game.
Good stuff. Chat soon.